Rick Newell is America's corporate driving safety expert. Rick is informative.
In this country, over the past 15 years, we average 42,000 automobile fatalities every year. Every year on the streets and highways of this country, 42,000 people die. That is the single largest reason for accidental death in this country.
Rick has impact.
You guys talk about lowering wrecks? With the type of driving that you're faced with right now, you shouldn't be talking about lowering wrecks. You should be talking about eliminating them. You shouldn't be looking at a 25% reduction. You should be looking at a complete elimination.
Rick is funny.
What color is a yield sign? It hadn't been yellow since 1985. 20 years. It's got a red border, it's got a white middle, and a big red yield sitting right in the middle of it. And it's been that way since 1985. Now, I did not do this merely to embarrass you. That's just kind of a nifty little byproduct.
Rick creates change.
But for the past 7.5 years, I have watched the tragedy that occurs on our roads, knowing that fully 85 to 90% of it we could do something about. I made a decision to take this to the business people of this country for one reason, and that is because we have so much impact on the people surrounding us. If we get it done on the job, we will get it done personally. In this country, over the past 15 years, we average 42,000 automobile fatalities every year. Every year on the streets and highways of this country, 42,000 people die. That is the single largest reason for accidental death in this country. And in this venue, perhaps more importantly, it is also the single largest reason for accidental death on the job in this country. 42,000 every year. That number in and of itself is pretty scary. But you want to take the next step? We have 3 million injuries and 6.5 million wrecks. This equates to over $250 billion in personal property damage. Folks, if you can't put some human faces behind them numbers, you're not trying hard enough. We're talking about a national tragedy. And it's a good thing we're talking about it in here because Lord knows nobody else is talking about it. What color is a yield sign? It hadn't been yellow since 1985. 20 years. It's got a red border, it's got a white middle, and a big red yield sitting right in the middle of it. And it's been that way since 1985. Now, I did not do this merely to embarrass you. That's just kind of a nifty little byproduct. I did this instead to prove a point. We look, but we do not see. We're looking, but it hits our eyes. It never makes our brain. We're looking, but we don't see. And if you don't believe this, how is it possible after 20 years, I ask a group of people who drive double what the average person does, and fully half of you said yellow? I'll tell you how bad this is. I was working with some high school kids, 18, 19 years old. What color's a yield sign? Yellow. Kid's 18 years old. He's never seen a yellow yield sign. He don't even know what one looks like. You want to talk about conditioning on the road? Yellow. Raise your hand if you've heard of the 2-second rule. Okay. Here in the state of Texas, that's what we believe is proper following distance. 2 seconds. That's what I taught was a 2-second rule. However, here in Texas, we like to do things pretty fast. Most states recommend 3 seconds. I stand in front of you today and I offer myself as a driving safety expert. That is not because I'm any smarter than you. I've just had time to do what you haven't. See, I've read the books, gone to the websites, watched documentaries. I've even written a book of my own. And as a driving safety expert, I am here today to tell you that 2 seconds is not enough. I do not believe that 3 seconds is enough, and I would like to recommend 4 seconds worth of following distance as a constant when it comes to driving. 4 seconds. Let me tell you why. 2 seconds will work, but it requires perfection, doesn't it? If you're only 2 seconds behind someone, particularly if you're driving a 25,000-pound vehicle, you may be able to get it stopped, but you've got to be perfect. Folks, we're just not that perfect. 3 seconds means you've got to be good. 3 seconds means if you're talking to that person, if you're on that cell phone, if you're reaching for that cup of coffee, you might not be able to get it done in 3 seconds, 4 seconds. You know what, folks? For the most part, at 4 seconds, you got my permission to be as stupid as you want to. Because at 4 seconds, I could probably handle it. Now, part of our problem when we start talking about this is, now, wait a minute. There's 4 seconds worth of room in here. I'm going to have a whole bunch of people coming into my gap, and the next thing you know, I'll be back in my own driveway. That ain't going to work. Let me ask you something. If there's only 2 seconds worth of room between you and the vehicle in front of you, can somebody get in front of you? Absolutely. But what happens when they do? Well, they cut you off, right? And after they cut you off, then what do? Then they hit their brakes. Drives you crazy every time it happens, right? You want to know how to eliminate this? If you will go back to 4 seconds instead of 2 seconds, all of a sudden you will begin to discover that those people that were cutting you off before, now they come into and out of your gap without coming anywhere close to molesting you. They don't come anywhere close to touching you. And the other wonderful thing that happens with all of this is, why'd they pass you? Well, I assume because they want to go faster than you. So now, they don't hit their brakes. And within about 2 seconds, you're back to 4 seconds. Nobody got cut off. Nobody had to hit their brakes. You guys work with dangerous equipment. I work at a construction company. I asked them one time, what's the most dangerous piece of equipment that you work with? They gave me about a half a dozen different answers. At the end of the conversation, I said, you're all wrong. Most dangerous piece of equipment that you're going to operate today, tomorrow, the day after that, and for the rest of your life, the rest of your working life, is your company vehicle. Why is it that we have less industrial accidents and car wrecks? It's because, hey, if you're working with high energy wire, there's a pretty good chance you're paying attention. Don't you think you need to be paying the same amount of attention when you get behind the wheel of your vehicle and put it in gear?
Rick's workshops have an impact on many organizations throughout the country. Here's what a few of his clients are saying.
After having Rick work with my drivers, we will be using his services on a regular basis. Rick really knew how to communicate with our drivers. His presentation offered practical, common-sense safety techniques that they will use daily. Since Rick's workshop last fall, our 40 delivery drivers have not had a single wreck.
My understanding, when I talked to Randy, I asked him, I said, now, when your guys get behind the wheel of a vehicle to drive to a job site, are they still on the clock? Do they clock out? Randy looked at me like I was a little bit crazy. I said, so what that means is that when they're making that drive, they're on company time, aren't they? And do you know what that makes them? That makes them professional drivers. At that moment, they're driving for a living. As safety personnel, that is a message that I believe you have to get across to them. This isn't an option. It's their job. TXU owns a chunk of that 42,000, 3 million, 6 million wrecks. They own a thin slice of that pie. And every time you make that pie or that slice a little thinner, you're putting money back into the company. All of you understand how important safe driving is. I submit to you that it is time to literally redouble your efforts to communicate that message. Every safe driver that you put on the road not only protects themselves and their company, your company, but they also protect everyone around them. Every father that you teach how important driving safely is going to then transmit that information to their children. What you folks in this room can do is breed a society that thinks in terms of safety. I don't work for TXU, but for the past 7.5 years, I have watched the tragedy that occurs on our roads, knowing that fully 85 to 90% of it we could do something about. I made a decision to take this to the business people of this country for one reason, and that is because we have so much impact on the people surrounding us. If we get it done on the job, we will get it done personally. You're doing marvelous work. You're doing incredible work. You're doing work that has to be done. And when you go back into your office tomorrow, the day after, and the next safety meeting that you have, transfer that enthusiasm about safety to the people who are there. Because speaking as a driver who is not employed by TXU, we're depending on you. You can make a difference. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.